The Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari today spoke on sustainable solutions to poverty, food insecurity, hunger, fair trade, and infrastructure that the world's least developed countries face. The UN conference holding in Doha was attended by world leaders, the private sector, civil societies, and youth organizations. Let's take a listen to Mr. President's address.
In 2015, the world came together to endorse the 2030 Agenda for 17 Sustainable Development Goals. There was no doubt that it was highly ambitious and would require leaders around the world to be fully committed for the Sustainable Development Goals to be achieved within the projected time frame. 8 years on, the possibility of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals remains bleak for many countries, particularly the least developed countries. The difficulties in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals are numerous and further compounded by the coronavirus pandemic, the continued threat of climate change, and recently the Russian-Ukraine conflict. The least developed countries are often faced with developmental vulnerabilities and challenges that are not always of their making. These pose huge obstacles to their development efforts, hence the need for urgent and robust assistance to help unlock their potential and build socio-economic resilience. This assistance can be provided within the framework of the Doha Program of Action, which is designed to help least developed countries exit their current classification. Nigeria is also strongly committed to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and believes that the Doha Program of Action presents a viable framework for achieving these goals. Accordingly, we urge developed countries, civil society actors, the private sector, business community, and others to partner with the least developed countries in order to provide necessary resources and help develop the capacity to achieve the economic, social, environmental goals of the 2030 Agenda. As a matter of urgency, there are a number of priorities we have to focus on to help achieve sustainable development goals in these countries and ensure their prosperity. First, coronavirus has taught us that we must all work together to ensure that diseases do not thrive in the least developed countries due to their overall negative impact on productivity and economic growth and development. Accordingly, policy and budgetary provisions must be made to ensure equal access to Medicare and vaccines for the poor and the rich alike. We must also work with manufacturers of medical equipment and pharmaceutical companies to provide adequate equipment, test kits, vaccines, and treatment for diseases. There is no doubt that the least developed countries need enormous financial support and investment of enormous resources to reduce poverty, create jobs, combat hunger, expand social protection systems, and ensure quality education. The need inflow of foreign investment has largely been difficult due to the nature of the global financial system, which places an unsustainable external debt burden on the least developed countries. That is why Nigeria agrees with the United Nations Secretary General's description of the global financial system as an unfair debt architecture that not only charges poor countries much more money to borrow on the market than advanced economies, but downgrades them when they even think of restructuring their debt or applying for debt relief. Your Excellencies, the adoption of a global coordination mechanism to systematically monitor illicit financial flows and endanger support for a United Nations International Convention on Tax Matters to eliminate base erosion and profit shifting, tax evasion, capital gains tax, and other tax abuses is essential to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and promoting security and economic prosperity. Your Excellencies, it is the hope of Nigeria that at the end of this conference, the Doha Program of Action will lead to the increase of exports from least developed countries through the facilitation of their access to foreign markets in line with World Trade Organization Trade Facilitation Agreement. Nigeria canvasses for duty-free and quota-free market access for products originating from the least developed countries to ensure their integration in regional and global value chains. Similarly, it is important to put in place modalities to facilitate transit cooperation, transfer of technologies, and access to global e-commerce platforms, as they are critical for least developed countries' integration into the regional and global value chains and communication technology services. Your Excellencies, least developed countries continue to suffer disproportionately from the effects of climate change, despite contributing the least to its causes. Deaths from climate-related crises are higher in the most vulnerable countries, with projections that there will continue to be an upward trend. Accordingly, we must prioritize cutting global emissions and work with determination to hold warming to 1.5 degrees, thereby securing our children's future. We must also commit to helping build resilience in developing countries, while also providing the needed technical as well as financial support for a just transition to renewable energy. Excellencies, we must continue to focus on how best to ensure the provision of security, education, health, and other basic services for our people in order to guarantee a prosperous future for all.